What's Ripening YouTube. So one of my viewers had commented on a video and they wanted to know kind of an update of how the loquat training had gone. I did like one of my first videos was training loquats or something like that. And I got the idea from a woman named Norris Ledesma. She recommended doing it for mango trees, basically the upright growth. If you can get it to lay out a little bit, you can improve the structure of the tree when it's young and it's still pliable. And so I decided to try that on my loquats, and it was the first thing I tried it on, so didn't really know what I was doing. I was using railroad spikes, which I found out are not really heavy enough, but since then I've made a couple of changes. Here's one of the ones I did originally. I found too that I was using different types of string. This is like clothesline material, and let's see, if you look at it, you can see where it's pulled down. Basically this branch pulled down, and now it's wanting to grow up. As it grows up again, I can pull it down again, and I can keep doing that. Here's another one on this side that was obviously pulled out, and it's come out a little bit. This tree wanted to be more upright beforehand. So that's prototype number one, just a railroad spike and some string. Thing about this is the wind blows, the branch moves around, and this can come up and move. So what I've been using instead is concrete blocks and or pavers. Whatever pieces of concrete I have available, that's what I'll use now, just because they don't move around so easily. Here's another tree that I tied down. Unfortunately, this one's leaning from the hurricane, but it is a pretty happy tree. It's got a nice structure. It just needs to be tilted up. But you can see it's setting fruit quite well for its age. This one is Yehuda variety. The only thing that I found with this tree, and I'm really disappointed now, is I had lemongrass growing here. I let it grow up, and it made the perfect ecosystem for, I think, rats. And what they're doing, they've been chewing my irrigation line. They chew up all my irrigation line, and they've even been girdling this tree. And they haven't gone all the way around, so the tree might survive, but I'm really disappointed because it's a beautiful tree, and I don't know how it's going to do long term now. We'll see. Here's another tree that I tied up. This one's called a Bradenton, and it's fruiting pretty well for its size. I just posted a picture. My first fruits came off of this one this year. It still has, if you look at it, it still has a really upright growth habit. And what happened was here, this tree was more mature and it wasn't as pliable, and the weights that I used weren't effective. It didn't hold the branches down. The strings are still hanging there, but they weren't effective. So if I had used concrete there, which is what I'm going to come back and do, I'm going to put concrete blocks there and tie it down better. Here's one that was a smaller tree when I planted. This is a Premier loquat, and here the strings are gone. I took the strings off a while ago, but you can see these branches are nice and laid out. So I've got a nice open structure here. Plenty of opportunities to fruit and branch and grow as it goes. Premier is not a fast-growing variety, so this is going to be a smaller. You can see it's got smaller leaves and a little bit more kind of petite loquat tree. But since it was younger, it was easier to manipulate it. So that's why I say if you're going to train them when they're young. Just like kids, if you want good kids, you might as well train them while they're young. Get them to learn. This is a kind of a weird tree. I bought this as a larger kind of a root-bound tree, and I actually took several air layers off. Here and here and here and here and up there. I took several air layers just because I didn't know if this tree was going to be a great tree in the ground, just since it had been in the pot for so long. But anyway, I planted it out after I took the air layers off, and it's doing fine. It doesn't have my ideal growth habit. What I'm probably going to do after these fruit come off, this is a Christmas variety, by the way. Once these fruit come off, I'm going to go ahead and probably top it somewhere, maybe like right here, and let it restructure itself. Some of these low branches fill in, and once they start to rebranch, then I'll train that one the way I showed you before. But let me quickly show you the mangoes. This is what I've been doing with the mangoes, and this is what I would recommend you do. Let's see. So here's one right here. This one is a Kathy mango, K3. It's one of the newer varieties. And if you see, it had 3 branches right here. They were all kind of headed up, and all I'm doing is pulling them down in different directions away from each other. So it's going to have a more open center, and it'll stay more lower to the ground as it goes. Some of these trees don't need to be trained, and some of them do. This one, I think that one's Venus. Well, I ran out of batteries in the middle of that last clip, so I'm going to try to pick up where I left off. So the concrete that I'm using to tie down these are the type of pavers I have. I just wrap the string around them and then tie them to a branch. One thing to be careful, this is a good example actually. This tree right here is a lemon meringue or Pupil Kalai. And if you look, when I got this tree, it had 2 leaders. Basically, it was a split, like a forked leader, and they were really close together. And so I tied one down that way and one down that way. And I actually tied them down a little bit too far, and it made a split right here. And luckily, I noticed it before the split really went anywhere. So I loosened them up a little bit, or actually I only loosened one up. The other one I held where it was, and it ended up healing just fine. It looks great now. If it hadn't have healed, I would have had to cut it off and let it start over, or else just cut one of these branches off and let the other one be the whole tree. But I'm glad it healed because it looks really nice now that I've done it. But if you look, it's a pretty nice little bushy tree. I did the same thing with this branch over here. I pulled that one down for a while, and then on this side I pulled this one down for a while, and I've taken them off now because once it sets, it's pretty good to go. But make sure if you have a close fork like this that you don't pull them too hard apart, because you can damage them. You can split the tree. Ideally, you want to have a leader with branches coming off the leader, and they'll be tender and you can pull them and they'll already have some angle to them. If things are too tight, you can damage. So just keep that in mind. Be careful. Another thing, I've got another one I'll show you that's another good lesson learned, is when you're tying these on, be careful. I think it's this tree over here. Be careful how you tie onto the branches, because if you tie it where there's no room, the branch will outgrow it, and it can damage the tree. I'm usually pretty good about it. I noticed this on one of my trees. This is my Cassar tree, really bushy growth habit, so I actually didn't have to tie this one down at all. But I did notice there was if you look right there, there was a piece of, I think when they had the original stake that was on this tree, there was a little piece of green whatever, and I didn't notice it, and it was actually girdling part of the tree, and I finally found it, dug it out of there, and I think it's going to heal fine. But when you are tying up the branches, like if you were to tie down this branch right here, make sure you're leaving a loop of material. You're not tying like a tight knot against the branch and pulling it down, because that branch will outgrow it, and if you don't adjust it or come back and look at it, you can damage the whole branch, and which would defeat the purpose of what you're trying to do here. But one more I'll show you real quick. I've mentioned this one before, but this is kind of the most dramatic example of what it looks like when you, that I have anyway. So this one's called Maha Chinook. Let me go on the other side, better light. This one's called Maha Chinook, and this one had 4 central branches that were all headed pretty much straight up. I laid them all out, and if you look, it's got a really open center now. Looks kind of funky in here. Hopefully that won't be an issue long term. But now that this is out flat, you'll notice the tree's pretty wide open. It's actually already flowering. I'm expecting to get some fruit on this one. Maybe I'll let it hold a couple fruit this year. But I can keep doing that. I can take this branch and tie it down a little bit further. I can take this guy and tie it down. I really don't need to yet. I'm going to keep an eye on it if I want to keep modifying it as I go. Again, some of the trees don't need it. Kasar is one I recommend. It's an excellent mango. Tastes really good. It's been evaluated as having good disease resistance. Here's another one that doesn't need any training. This one's called Dwarf Hawaiian. Really small leaves and really kind of bushy so far. Beautiful little tree. Another one that I haven't needed to do anything to would be Cac. Cac, I don't know if it's always like this, but the one I have is really, let me go on the other side so you have better light, really low growing and nice bushy habit. I don't know if you can tell, but that tree is only about 4 feet tall, and it's just a bush, and I didn't do anything. This one right here is the Sweet Tart. This one looks pretty nice, but I did do some pruning on, some tipping on that one to make it do that. And I did, pull the branches out a little bit. But overall, I'd say the training of the young trees is worthwhile. I would recommend it. I would use heavy weights so that they're not moving around. And I would use, when you tie it up, make sure that the loops aren't tight against the branch so you don't cinch it off when the branch grows up. And then make sure you're doing this with young growth. Older growth, it has a tendency to crack or split. You want young stuff that's still pliable. What I've found so far too is that it only takes about, well, I guess it depends on what time of year, but I would say you can leave it on for 6 months and it should be good to go. You should be able to take them back off and either retie them, adjust them. Maybe it's you've already got the first branch out and it's starting to put out new branches from there. You can get the next branch out even further. But maybe just check on them every 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and see how they're going. Ideally, you'd be checking them more often than that, because if we have a strong storm, you can break strings or things can move around. So it's worthwhile to check on them every now and again. But hopefully that answers the question I had about the loquat trees and gives you a little more information in general about tying down baby trees. Good luck with it, and see you next time.